Reimagining Chapel. We are so glad that you are joining us today. Let's start by lighting our chalice. Do you have a chalice at home with you? If you do, go grab it. Now, a chalice can really be anything that can hold a candle. That means something special to you. So I have our flower pot chalice that we made a little bit ago here, and my candle, and so I'm going to light it. The intention we're going to set today is joy, with our action of service. We light this chalice for joy. In the spirit of service, we gather together in community to learn, to grow, and to serve. Well, here on Reimagining Chapel, we also like to start with a meditation. And this is a meditation that we did before our holiday break that I want to revisit because I really like it. We've used it in our home, and we're going to start to use it in Reimagining Chapel in person and on Zoom as well. So this is how you do it. You can stand or you can sit down. Whatever is working best for you. If I'm sitting down, I know that I would like to be touching the ground though, so I feel that grounding presence of the earth beneath me. So all I'm gonna do is hold out my hand. How simple is that? And I'm gonna trace my fingers. We did this before. We're gonna remember that as we trace our fingers up, we're gonna take in a great big breath, and then as we trace our fingers down, we're gonna let that out slowly. Now, as I'm doing it in my own head, I'm setting my intention, or I'm repeating that intention. So like today for our chalice lighting, our intention was joy. So I could say in my own head, I am filled with joy. So I would go like this. I'm gonna hold out my hand. I'm gonna take a deep breath in. I am filled with joy. 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 Just these 5 simple, slow breaths are enough to center me for this day, for this moment to share with you. This is a practice that you can do anywhere because you may not always have like our singing bowl, but you will always have your hand. So this is a practice that you can incorporate daily if you need to or want to center yourself in this moment. So many things are busy around us. Coming up with ways for us to have a spiritual practice that's quick and easy is important. So this is another tool in our toolbox that we like to add to. Another tool is sharing what's in our hearts and minds. If you have a joy and concern, share it with those around you. They want to hear it. And I'll be right here waiting for you when you come back. Thank you for sharing your joys and concerns with the people that love you, that want to hear what's on your minds and in your hearts. Well, I get to share this week's UU of the Week, who was a pioneer in Universalist thought in the 20th century. I hope you enjoy learning about them. When people consider Universalist thought in the 20th century, they think of this week's UU of the Week, Clarence Skinner. Born on March 23, 1881, he was raised into a third-generation Universalist family. Additionally, they were all performers in Brooklyn, New York. Clarence decided not to go into the family business, however, and instead felt himself called into the Universalist ministry. He attended St. Lawrence University, where he studied the ministry. It's there that he met his wife and lifelong companion, Clara. They were married just after his ordination in 1906. Prior to his ordination, Clarence worked as an assistant at the Church of the Divine Paternity in New York City. There, his primary job was in religious education, leading classes and groups for people of all ages. Additionally, he began to work with the Universalist Commission on Social Service. This group's goal was to highlight the injustices in the world and use their faith as the backbone to solving the problems. This cause would be central to Clarence's ministry for the rest of his life. After his ordination, Clarence and Clara moved to Mount Vernon, New York, where he served at the Universalist Church of Mount Vernon. Shortly after, in 1911, he moved on to the Grace Universalist Church in Lowell, Massachusetts. He began to teach at Tufts College and revitalized an evening program similar to our very own summer forum called the Lowell Forum. Speakers from the community were invited to discuss issues in the community, including labor issues central to the industrial area. He was president of the Sunday School Society and published his first major work, The Social Implications of Universalism. In the piece, he espoused a theology based on an optimistic view of the world, where people worked together in a socialist vision for heaven on earth. It established a new vision for Universalist theology and mission. Clarence became the voice of modern universalism. This vision, however, was still considered radical. Socialism has always been a hard sell in the United States, even under the purvey of religion. Additionally, the United States was entering the First World War. As a pacifist, a person who does not believe in the violence of war is ever necessary, he was against the United States entering the war. His views were attacked and he suffered professionally. He was fired from his position as a part-time minister at a lab church that he worked at with students, and alumni from Tufts called for his resignation. His firm pacifist stance even led to the district attorney investigating him. This was all incredibly disheartening for Clarence. He had based his ministry around supporting a vision of the world that was crumbling around him. The United States was rejecting all liberal thought. Brokenhearted over the world around him, Clarence did the best thing he could think of to serve as a balm for others. He created a new church. From 1920 to 1935, Clarence served as the church's leader for the Community Church of Boston. Without ties to any particular denomination, the church was free to set up as it pleased. Clarence began to also pulpit share with Reverend John Haynes, who, in a similar move, had created the Community Church of New York after resigning his fellowship from the Unitarian Association. The churches were involved in several social causes, wanting political and economic justice for all. By 1933, Clarence was appointed the Dean of the Crane School of Theology at Tufts. Once again, he threw himself into teaching and writing. Near the beginning of the Second World War, Clarence's health began to fail. He had cancer, and he needed to resign from his beloved teaching and preaching professions. He spent the final few years of his life settling his library of works and writing his final book, published after his death, Religion and a Well-Ordered Life. Clarence died in his summer home in Connecticut on August 26, 1949. Clarence believed that people had the ultimate responsibility to each other to create a world that was just and loving for everyone. That people, if they followed the examples of God, could create a heaven in the here and now. He said, "We must so expand our spiritual powers that we vastly increase our understanding and sympathy. There is no middle way. It is the greatness, universalism, or perish." Thank you, Reverend Skinner, for relentlessly pursuing this world understanding for us all.
Welcome to the Wonder Box. I'm Lisa Lander, and I'm thrilled to be the Religious Education Assistant right here at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. For the last few weeks, we have been talking about our 6 sources of spiritual inspiration. These are the things and people that we turn to help us make sense of the world. For some, that might be the wonder of nature or the words and actions of people who have made a difference. As Unitarian Universalists, our 3rd source of spiritual inspiration is the wisdom from all the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual lives. So I think as people, we are trying to tell the same stories about how to be in this world. We just have different words and experiences, different names for things. When I study other religious traditions, I love finding the ideas that we have in common, and even better is when I find a tool to help me on my path to find truth and meaning. Should we look and see what's in the Wonder Box today? It is a picture of rose apples. Now, what on earth is a rose apple, you might say? I know I did. I learned that the rose apple is bright red, shaped like a pear, and tastes like pink lemonade. Guys, that sounds amazing. So I fell down this rabbit hole of fruit exploration because of one of the many stories that I read this week to get ready for chapel. It was called Siddhartha and the Rose Apple Tree. Siddhartha was a prince from India. When he was born, a wise man said, "If the prince remains in the royal household, he will become a great king. But if he leaves the household, he will find truth and become a great holy man." Siddhartha's father, the king, did not want his son to leave, so he gave him everything he could ever want or need to make him stay. But those things did not make Siddhartha happy. He snuck away when he was 29 for a ride through the town on a chariot. Siddhartha saw the people suffering, and he wondered what the source of their suffering was. Siddhartha thought so much about the source of suffering that he decided to leave the kingdom and search for truth and meaning. For 6 years, he lived a life that was the complete opposite of his fancy childhood in the palace. He went without food and sometimes even without breathing for as long as he could. That's nuts. For 6 years, he thought about the true meaning of life and death, but his own suffering that he imposed on himself did not help him figure it out. Then he had a memory of being a child sitting under the rose apple tree back in his kingdom. It was the day of the first plowing. And since most of us watching are city kids, let's stop for a quick definition of plowing. This is when they use a large metal tool called a plow, which is pulled by an animal to dig those long holes where the seeds would be planted. These days, farmers use tractors for this, but this story happened a really, really long time ago. So the people would dress in fancy clothes and they would listen to the holy men chant and pray for a good harvest that year. Siddhartha went with the other children to watch the plowing. He sat under the rose apple tree and noticed the man who was hot and tired of prodding the buffalo to pull the plow. He noticed how exhausted the buffalo was from its work. Siddhartha even noticed the worms which had been turned up in the soil, trying to find their homes again. He noticed the birds who ate the worms who had been brought back up to the surface. As Siddhartha thought about all the things he was seeing, he noticed that he felt calm and happy. He realized that all living things wanted to feel peaceful and happy, just like him, in that moment, from the buffalo who was tired to the worms who were exposed to the birds who were hungry. He realized that all living things are interconnected in this pursuit of happiness, and this realization became Siddhartha's first meditation. The memory of this first meditation, when he was an adult trying to understand suffering, gave him a path to enlightenment or peace. He realized that neither extreme suffering nor lavish comfort would make him happy, but walking a path down the middle would lead to peace. Siddhartha became the Buddha and went on to teach millions of other people how to find peace. Now, Buddhism is just one of the world's religions which inspire us as UUs. In that story, I heard so many ideas that we talk about in here almost every Sunday, like that we live in an interconnected web of life. We are here to search for truth and meaning. And each person's search for meaning and happiness is just as important as mine is to me. All of the world's religions have so much to teach us, and we have just barely scratched the surface. It's a good thing that we gather here as a community each week to learn, to grow, and to serve. Thanks for joining me today for this edition of the Wonder Box, and please join us again next time.
Each person is important. To be kind in all you do. 3, help each other.